This Friday, I did the chapel at CCAGC for the kids. We take turns, different pastors and different people take turns doing that on Fridays. It's always pretty fun. I decided we were going to work through the Storybook Bible. That's the curriculum we use back here, and it just does a really good job of pointing to Christ throughout the Old Testament. So starting with Adam and Eve and Abraham, Moses, the whole way through, it shows the kids how the Old Testament relates to what Jesus came to do. And we're up to where the Israelites had left Egypt and they were getting ready to cross the Red Sea. Before we watch the story, I put 2 lines on the floor with painter's tape. I had one right where we were with the kids, and I put one like 75 feet away out on the floor. And I said, all right, guys, this is what we have to do. We need to put our toes on this line, and in one jump from this line over past that line. And of course they knew they couldn't do it, but we get to jump in church. So that's going to be fun. So everybody's jumping, and wherever they landed, I had another piece of tape with their name on it. And I just put that there so they could see. And it turned into a big ruckus, and we disturbed the whole school, and the people came out on the balcony and told us we needed to be quiet, but we had fun. And then we got into the story. And if you're not familiar or need a refresher, the Israelites left Egypt. They were on their way to the Promised Land, and they got to the Red Sea and were contemplating how to cross it. And about that time, they heard the chariots of Pharaoh's army coming after them. Pharaoh had changed his mind, and he dispatched every chariot he had, and they were coming after them, and they were doomed. They were trapped. But God put the pillar of cloud that they had been following between them and Pharaoh's army. So they're facing this Red Sea. They don't know what they're going to do, and here comes Pharaoh's army, but the cloud that they were following went behind them and covered them so that Pharaoh's army couldn't see them. And then the winds continued to blow, and it said that the winds blew and separated the Red Sea into 2 walls of water, and they walked through on dry ground. And then, of course, when Pharaoh's army pursued, the water came back in and wiped them all out. So after we went over that story, we talked about how we, just like the Israelites, are trying to get to the Promised Land. Our Promised Land is heaven. Jesus says he's going to prepare a place for us. But just like the Israelites, a big sea of sin stands in our way. And how we talked about that, and we talked about how Jesus' death and resurrection is the miracle for us. It's the miracle that parts that sea of sin and makes a way for us to get to the Promised Land. All these kids, we're talking little guys, kindergarten to 6th, 7th grade, and it always surprises me how much, even the little ones, it seems like it clicks, and it seems like they can understand that. So here's to hoping they remember all those lessons when they get older. Anyway, while we were doing the jumping, I noticed something. When I explained the challenge, I had the tape, and I had the other tape. When I explained it to them, they were looking where they needed to go, and they were thinking, there's no way. And the first couple kids that jumped, even though they knew they weren't going to make it, they had their eyes where they needed to go. And then after a couple kids went, they weren't trying to jump for the line. They weren't looking at the line. They were trying to jump farther than Billy. Yeah. They were trying to jump farther than Owen. They, instead of looking to the goal, looking to the standard, they were looking at where did their friends land. Sometimes they would jump farther than their friends and they'd cheer, yeah, I got it. Other times they'd fall up a little short and, oh man, I missed it. Can I get another jump? I can do it, and it's like, no, you just get one. It was a silly illustration to help them remember that they need God for salvation. They can't do it on their own. They can't get there on their own. But in observing that illustration, I noticed something that's one of our greatest barriers to that. They were more concerned about each other. They were more concerned about where they fell relative to their peers than the fact that they were woefully short of the goal. Luke 18, verse 9. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give a tenth of all I get. This guy seems like fun, doesn't he? When Jesus puts it like this, it's easy for us to look at that and be like, man, I'm glad I'm not like that guy. What a jerk. Like, what an arrogant jerk. But let's take a look at this. Look who he's compared himself to. Robbers, evildoers, adulterers, and tax collectors. A veritable who's who of New Testament bad guys. It's almost like he's reminding God how awesome he is by comparing himself to the absolute worst, the worst ones. His standard isn't what God is asking him to do. It's that he's much better than those. He says, God, I thank you. But he's not thanking God. He's not, God, thank you for helping me to resist temptation, or thank you for giving me a good family, or these opportunities that I had to become what I am today. He's not thanking him for that. Just thank you that I'm not them. I'm not them. In verse 12, he says, I fast twice a week, and I give a tenth of all I get. The commentaries I read said this would have meant twice a week from sun up to sundown, no food. And the tenth of all I get, the word all I get, was literally everything he got. So not just he didn't tithe on the money he earned and then go spend it. He tithed on the money he earned, and then when he got the things he bought, he tithed on a tenth of that. Just in case the person that had supplied whatever he bought hadn't tithed on their money. Like, just to make sure, no dirty money, no dirty dry goods. Like, we need to make sure we're covered. This is what he's concerned about. He's really ramping it up here. I read this like, God, boy, are you lucky you've got me. I fast, I pray, I give more than I need to. I'm not like all those other guys. I'm your MVP. It's really good, God, that you have me. I knew a guy once who used to do a lot of that I stuff. The joke was he sang Old MacDonald like, Old MacDonald had a farm, I. If your prayer life is just reminding God how great you are and not thanking him for how great he is, you're missing the boat. Now, let's take this Pharisee who's praying. Let's put him on the banks of the Red Sea. Let's imagine what that would be like, him standing there with the Israelites. He wasn't there, but what if he was? How sure of himself would he be with the echoes of chariot wheels in the background and a vast sea out in front? Would have been a different tune. He could have been arrogant the whole way there. They could have been walking through the desert and he could have been, I'm up front because I'm the best and da-da-da-da-da. But the minute you see what's in front of you and the minute you see what's behind and you realize you've got no way out, I don't care who you are. That arrogance goes right out the window. It would have been a different tune. He wouldn't have been looking around anymore and saying, boy, I'm better than this guy. I'm better than that guy. He'd be looking at the obstacle in front of him and the danger behind and saying something like what the tax collector said in verse 13. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. We had some good jumpers and some not so good jumpers at school on Friday. We even had a couple really great jumpers. But you know what the spread was from the very best jumper to the very worst jumper? About 3 feet. That was the difference. From the very best one, the athlete, to the one that didn't even try because she thought it would be funnier if she just took a little hop. That was my sister's kid. And it was funny. She got a laugh. I'll give her that. That was the spread, like 3 feet. All way, way short of the goal line. Some better than others, but in the grand scheme of things, a percentage, a fraction of a percentage, nothing. A few of them, if all they saw was how they did relative to their peers, could have been pretty proud of their effort. A bunch of others could have felt like they were in good company because there was a whole bunch of tape where they landed. I'm just like the others. I'm just like my friends. I'm right in the middle of the pack. I'm safe here. And then a couple of kids probably would have felt like they all should have, like the tax collector who knew his place not relative to his friends, but relative to the goal. God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Verse 14, I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Trusting our own righteousness is fatal. You guys might be thinking, yeah, we know. We're not like that guy. And you're right. You're not. You guys aren't super arrogant and condescending. You're kind. You help others. You come to church. You bring food. You volunteer. You put the lid down after you pee. I mean, what more could you ask for? Seriously, you guys are awesome. Like, some of my best friends are here. Way better than those other ones out there that milk the system and don't take care of their families. See how fast it happens? See how sneaky it is? That's all it takes. On one hand, we're doing our best to be holy. We're doing our best to follow God like we should. And sometimes, hopefully more than sometimes, we are holy. So hopefully a lot of the time we are doing the right thing. We are following God and trying to get it right exactly how he wants us to have it in our lives. Hopefully that happens a lot. Hopefully we do a good job at that. And it feels good to do a good job. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at our progress, looking at where God has brought us out of, look at where he's got us going and feeling joy and feeling happiness in that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But man, the minute we look to the left or the right and use the others that we see around us as a measuring stick, we're right where this guy was. That's all it takes. That is all it takes. Ezekiel 33, verse 13. If I tell a righteous person that they will surely live, but then they trust in their righteousness and do evil, none of the righteous things that person has done will be remembered. They will die for the evil they have done. That's exactly what we're talking about. If we have been saved and we're made righteous and are walking with God, we know we'll live. We can have confidence in that. We're supposed to have confidence in that. But the minute that we forget that our confidence is in God's power and not our own righteousness, the minute we think it's something we've earned or something that now we possess, that we've attained, we blow it. Our righteousness does not exist except Christ. 2 Corinthians 5:21, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. The minute we trust in our own righteousness, it ceases to exist. It's like the Schrodinger's cat of the spiritual world. Do you guys know that one? But if we remember our righteousness is in Christ, we live. Let's pray.